welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight and spending your precious time to support the Sherborn Community Center. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Doug Furbush, and I am currently the president of the Sherborn Community Center Foundation. And I have been a resident in Sherborn for about 25 years. I would like to welcome you and thank you for coming out tonight and showing your support. I would also like to thank the current volunteer board members. As most of you know, and some of you past people know, this is an all-volunteer group of people that support the foundation. And these people put in a lot of time of their own during the course of the year. So I'd like to recognize them and have the current board members stand. Just so you, people have asked me who's on the board, so could all the board members please stand up? I think we have one opening if anybody's interested. So the board for the past year has been meeting on Zoom about once a month, going through all of the action items that we have here at the community center, and we're looking forward to meeting in person, most likely, hopefully, starting in September. A special thank you to Ernie Gano for successfully navigating the center's events, maintenance, and COVID protocols this past year. Not an easy task, so I want Ernie to stand up and recognize Ernie. Ernie is our go-to guy here at the community center. He does everything from maintenance to bookings to handling anything. So if any of you have any personal events, birthday parties, etc., you want to have, you call Ernie. He'll put you on the calendar and you can rent the space here at a discount. The center is slowly getting back to normal with increased rentals and other in-person gatherings. We have continued to support the library as a tenant, and we remain financially solid. With that in mind, I want to turn the meeting now over to Lois Alexander, who is our treasurer, and she's going to go through the financials of the foundation.
Thank you. This is probably the 15th time I've done this. I did it in the 90s, and 6 years ago I said I'd do it again. This is the financial report first? Yes. Okay. SCCF ended May with income over expenses of $1,265 versus budget. I anticipate the amount will end up with about $5,000 over budget. I've directed my report to provide some key information related to the renewal of our lease. Items of note are as follows. SCCF income is comprised of three components: the cell tower lease, membership, and rental income. Cell tower lease income approximates the building operating expenses. These expenses are, it can be board, but comprised of electricity, gas, HVAC maintenance and repairs, fire and safety contract and maintenance, elevator maintenance and biannual expenses, ground maintenance, pest extermination services, building and cleaning supplies, cleaning and building management, plus, as needed, electric, building, furnishing, and interior painting. So those expenses offset the cell tower income. Membership donations and rental income are needed to fund major expenses. In the next few years, the roof needs to be replaced, as does the original air conditioning, which is still somewhat operating. In addition, the building exterior needs continual repainting, which involves expensive scaffolding to reach two sides. Funds held for these projects at May 31 are $210,000. And our estimates probably approximate that, and in this COVID environment, we expect our estimates to be over what they were when we got them. In order to encourage community-sponsored activities as we emerge from the pandemic, we suspended all fees for such activities. We would charge a fee, minimal fee for community activities, and then we charge for hosting and setup. All of that has been eliminated. Due to the pandemic, there was only $6,300 in private function revenue this year. To date, SCCF is not scheduling any full building usages because we have the library downstairs. The most lucrative functions are for the full building. Most full building usages are scheduled 2 years in advance, and until the lease is renewed, which ends, our lease with the town ends in March, next March, we can't book anything. The library lease continues on a month-to-month basis until they give us 2 months' notice, and then propitiously, our former president, when he drafted and the Friends of the Library agreed, there would be some major maintenance expenses, i.e. the first floor will be repainted, the floors will be refinished, and the carpet will be repaired. That, of course, will take time. And that's my reward.
Good. Thank you, Lois. Again, another volunteer, by the way. She puts in a lot of time. All right, so for the President's report, again, I want to thank you all again for coming tonight. And as I've mentioned over the past year, we've accomplished quite a bit, including building back rentals, housing the library, fundraising activities, and maintaining the building in good working order. Here at the center, we have many community activities. The Sherborn Community Center building is available for private events at discounted rates to residents of the town, and it has been popular for weddings, bar mitzvahs, birthday parties, retirement parties, etc. In addition, there are several scheduled community activities held, such as Friday night at the movies for the younger children and Jammin' in the Red for teenagers. Summer theater programs for the Sherborn youth, meeting space for the garden club, youth sports teams, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, town activities like the annual town caucus, the Conservation Connections event held by the Conservation Commission, and others. The building is also made available to in-town nonprofits, such as the Sherborn Community of Aging and private memorial services at no charge or a freewill offering. The building has been made available to a number of town departments during major construction activities, such as the current library project. We are entering a critical stage in our 35-year history. The current lease with the town is up for renewal next March, and there are some people who do not believe a simple 20-year renewal is in the best interest of the town. Let me summarize. The Sherborn Community Center building 35 years ago was about to be condemned and torn down for safety concerns. Thankfully, a very forward-thinking group of Sherborn citizens raised at that time about $1 million and restored it to an operational and beautiful state. The town then awarded a 15-year lease to the Sherborn Community Center Foundation. that was subsequently renewed for an additional 20 years in 2002. This was in effect a triple net lease whereby the foundation paid all expenses and the foundation would retain any revenue raised, including the revenue from a sublease for a cell tower. An all-volunteer board of directors has managed the foundation along with one part-time building manager who you met. The current town lease with the foundation is up for renewal in March of 2023. The lease was previously granted by the town to the foundation for an annual rent of $1. The town recognized that if not for the residents and the volunteer board members, this historical landmark would not be here today. And the services provided were at no cost to the town taxpayers. This cost savings to the town included hundreds of thousands of dollars of capital expense dollars over the last 35 years, in addition to the original foundation-funded refurbishment of that $1 million. It was the assumption of the current board that the lease would renew for another 20 years, with the feeling being if the 35-year relationship with the town was not broke, don't fix it. Clearly, this has been a win-win-win experience. The residents enjoy the community activities, nonprofits have free space for their needs, and the town has a beautiful landmark building with no cost. What are the consequences of not renewing the lease with the foundation? The taxpayers would need to start funding the annual expenses and upkeep of the building, projected to be between $75,000 and $100,000 a year. In addition, as Lois mentioned, there are immediate upcoming capital expenses that include a new roof with an estimate of about $100,000, a new air conditioning and heating system at $200,000, and painting of the building estimated to be about $50,000. The current foundation sources of revenue would discontinue. Leasing of the space would stop. Fundraising for the town property would not be attractive to town residents. And the investment of the reserves we have would stay with the foundation. And the lucrative lease with Verizon would immediately end, and there would be no guarantees a new cell tower lease with the town would be as lucrative or even continue. Some town officials have suggested a short-term lease for the Sherborn Community Center. This would not be feasible for the following reasons. Private events, such as weddings, are booked out 2 to 3 years in advance. Capital expenditures would not have a return on investment to the foundation, and so the landlord, the town, would have to absorb these costs. It would make it difficult for the foundation to hire and keep employees knowing that the center may only have a short-term plan. Donations would be drastically reduced without a long-term plan. The current ongoing 5-year renewal of the cell tower lease would be problematic. With a short-term lease, we couldn't do 5-year renewals. In addition to the above, there would likely be considerable ill will created towards the longtime Sherborn residents who feel that the building would not exist if not for their and their friends and families' efforts, and they feel it should remain as an independent body. Our mission here at the foundation is to maintain a historical landmark building, provide economical, free space to town residents, and promote community activities, all at virtually no cost to the town taxpayer. Our vision for the future, post-library exit, includes an expansion of community activities and to hire a part-time executive director to implement these future plans. What are the next steps? We are waiting for the RFP from the Select Board so we can respond. We do not know if we will be the only entity to respond, and we also understand the town is not required to issue a lease, and they could decide to take the building back for town use. So, in summary, we are asking the residents to show their support wherever appropriate, to voice their support of the Sherborn Community Center Foundation, and to keep the current successful partnership with the town. And with that, we're going to open it up for some questions, if anybody has any. And we'd like to keep them relatively short if we could. Not everybody wants to stay all night here. So if there are any questions, just raise your hand and we'll point you out. And Frank is going to help me with some of the answers if I can't answer them. It was brought up at town meeting to give the approval to the select board, and it was voted in favor. So it's the 5 selectmen that have the decision on whether to renew our lease or not, and for how long.
Can you repeat the question next time?
What outlets can we use to express our support?
What?
Question. Like what?
So the question was, what outlets
Frank,
do you as the audience have? Can you?
The question was, what can you in the audience who support the community center do to show that support and to acknowledge that support? If you could make sure that you leave behind your information, preferably your email, when the situations arise, that we can reach out and let you know what we can use. Certainly being involved at select board meetings would be of importance. We'd have to see the agenda of the select board. That's why we'd like to have your contact information so we can let you know when that is, so that you can be there and support and provide any feelings that you have that you would want to share with the select board. So that's a great question. You could also always send a letter or an email directly to members of the select board. The select board of Sherborn are very receptive and they're very open. So I'm sure that they would like to hear what you have to say for or against. So I appreciate that. It's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, George.
I don't have a question, but I wonder if it makes sense for me and perhaps others, if they see fit, to make some comment relative to this issue as it impacts them or the organizations that they work with. So if that's the case, I'm happy to at least start that as perhaps a way to have some more dialogue. Up to you.
Well, we have a couple of testimonials coming up. It sort of falls into that category, right? So the answer is yeah, we can add that to that part of the agenda. So we'll do that.
So the question was, if somebody else would like to speak on some behalf of other organizations, that they have the opportunity as well.
All right, so if there aren't any other questions, Frank's going to turn it over to you for personal testimonies.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for coming out. It really means a lot to us, and we appreciate you being here, wanting to hear more about the issues of the community center that's so important in our town. It was always heartening for me to hear when I speak to the real estate professionals in our town say that one of the things that they use as a selling point of the town is that we have this Friday night at the movies, we have all these things that happen at the community center. So it's, just want to share that with you. I want to go into one order of business prior to doing the personal testimonials, and that is there is the payment of the annual rent to a town select board member. So I'd like Lois to take care of that.
Paul, could you come forward, and I'd like to present our annual rent.
Be sure to give a receipt, Lois.
I've got all of you, the witnesses. Thank you for
I'm here in solidarity to the cause of continuing the operation of this foundation in this building. If you look at if anybody actually looks at the lease, my name is at the bottom of it. I signed it 21 years ago. And I signed it then for good reason. The commitment of so many people to this building, to this cause, and to all the things that this building stands for was very impressive then and is very impressive today. So as I say, I'm here in solidarity with the purpose of continuing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We really appreciate your support.
Right, going to the personal testimonials, we have a number of people that would like to share the answer to the question, what does the Sherborn Community Center mean to me? What experiences have they had that has affected their lives? We're going to start with a statement from one of the original founders and the person that set this all up and made all of this happen. He could not be here today, but his daughter and granddaughter and son-in-law are all here, and his daughter. So the person's name is Dewey Talbert. Joey Talbert is going to make a statement on his behalf.
I'm Joey Talbert, and I grew up here in town, and my dad feels very strongly about this building, and he wrote this very comprehensive history. So I'm going to tell you the comprehensive history of the Community Center Foundation, so it all makes sense to those of you who might not have been here back then. In fact, anyone who moved in the past 5 years thinks that this building is the library, right? So let's give them some history. In 1980, the advisory board and the selectmen, or back then it was selectmen, it wasn't select board at the time, no longer wanted the town to spend money maintaining and operating the 1858 townhouse. It is by far the most expensive town building to operate. Around this time, he's not really sure of the date, he negotiated a 1-year lease of the building to the US Post Office. I don't know if anyone knew that, but they did. A study committee was formed, headed by Charlie Dowse Sr., and Charlie Dowse appointed my dad as a member. They learned a lot about the problem, but they didn't learn enough about the solution. Like, they knew a lot about the problem, but they didn't really have a solution. And also, due to the total land owned with the building, which only extends about 3 feet from the building, all the rest of the land belongs to the Unitarian Church. And it would be hard to get rid of the building because it doesn't really have any land along with it. In short, the town didn't want it, and no one else did either. At the time, he was president, my dad, Dewey Talbert, was the president of the Historical Society. And even he discussed it with the members of the Historical Society back then about taking the building, but the society could not afford it. They couldn't afford the expenses either, and they didn't really want to operate it. But there's 2 Historical Society members who did want to operate it, just a little parentheses for later. The selectmen had the building condemned and tried to give the building away for salvage, but there were no takers. Then, Louis Randa acquired the building from the town and intended to use it to school the intellectually challenged in independent living. And around that time, Bob Ambos was talking to my dad on the back steps of the building before they went in for Sherborn Players. Remember, you guys remember the Sherborn Players? For a rehearsal of the Sherborn Players, right? Awesome. Harvey, I'll never forget your dad playing Harvey. Not, he didn't play Harvey, but he played. Anyway, moving on. So they were chatting out there. Sorry, I got excited and I lost my train of thought. Okay, so Bob Ambos and my dad were talking in the back steps, and that Bob Ambos proposed that he and my dad form a private group to save the building for community organizations like the Players for a modest rent, and then for private groups for a not so modest rent. And then he said he would begin the organizing, and he wanted my dad to handle the fundraising. Then they go into their players meeting and they tell all this idea to the players, and they all thought that was a great idea, so that the players could continue to use the building, and the players all embraced the idea, and he's pretty sure he got his first contribution from them that night as a part of to raise the funds. Okay, the first problem was neither they nor the town now own the building, right? Remember, Louis Randa owned it. Enter Pat Cassell. Pat was a friend of Louis Randa, and Bob Ambos and my dad explained the idea of the community center to her, and she liked it and became the go-between and the negotiator with Louis Randa. During their talks with Louis, all of the building problems and expenses that they had learned about while on the study committee, like my dad was on that original study committee, that all surfaced while talking to Louis. And Louis realized that the building operating expenses would be prohibitive for his purposes. So, Mr. Randa donated the building to the Sherborn Community Center Foundation. At that time, Bob had already gotten it legal, Bob Ambos had already gotten it legally formed, the Sherborn Community Center Foundation. The Sherborn Community Center was established as a private, non-profit corporation, and as such, the board of directors on behalf of the community of Sherborn acquired, restored, and operated the center at no cost to the town. The restoration alone cost well over $1 million back in 1983, like $1983, thus preserving this unique architectural and historic building, something that the government of Sherborn was unable or unwilling to do due to the prohibitive costs. Like, it was just too expensive for Sherborn to do it. The foundation legally solicited and collected donations to operate the center and to establish an endowment fund. After struggling to raise the money for the first year of the operating costs, my dad had observed that some churches were leasing steeples as cell towers. So my dad, on behalf of the foundation, wrote the RFP and negotiated a set of renewable successive 5-year leases with Verizon, which was mentioned earlier. The money goes to the foundation to help in defraying the considerable operating costs of the building. The CC Foundation also negotiated the use of the driveway and the parking spaces, all of which are on Unitarian Church land. In 1985 or 6, in order to take advantage of the municipal, this is kind of important, ready? All right. In order to take advantage of the municipal real estate insurance rate, the Community Center Foundation Corporation agreed to donate the building to the town in return for a lease back at the rate of $1 per year. The town would not accept the gift unless the Community Center Foundation Corporation agreed to pay all annual operating costs, which is about, back then in 1986, was $40,000 a year. Plus, the Community Center Foundation agreed to pay the insurance premiums. So they owned the building, they gave it to the town, and now they're renting it back. This is what my dad wants done. It's really in tiny print, so this is what he thinks we should do. Action to take. Attending and advocating for the community center at all selectmen board meetings, advocating with advisory board members. The goal is to get the 1858 townhouse, which is only now in existence because of the Community Center Foundation and was owned by the Community Center Foundation before being donated by it to the town, to be treated as a special, specific purpose building, the community center, as is like the library building. So when the library is finally finished, that library is just the library, right? He wants this building to just be the Community Center Foundation building to rent and operate for the town. Thank you.
So that was a very detailed history of that, and it gives everybody a pretty clear indication of where the building started from and what the purpose and what the idea was for this building. So thank you for that. So that sets the stage, so to speak, for the testimonials of those that have had experience thanks to that vision, thanks to that beginning. And I would also like to add just to that little bit of history that had it not been for the willingness of the select men, that select board at the time, to work with your father and his group of the foundation members, we would not be here today. So we are in this in partnership. So I just want to indicate and clearly note that. And we certainly recognize that Paul Durensis is here from the Select Board as a friend. And we also have Marion Neutra here, who I also want to recognize, who's from the Select Board. And she's here also getting more information and just seeing what's happening at our community center. So with that said, I'd like to have another testimonial, and as a previous student director, we use high school student directors to run the student director program, and within that program, there are a variety of things done to provide a place for the younger people in our town to enjoy this amazing building. The person that was giving us their address is Elizabeth Owen, but Elizabeth Owen couldn't be here tonight, so Corinne Whitaker is going to read her statement.
Thank you, Frank. So I have the pleasure of reading Elizabeth's letter. She says, "Good evening, everyone. First, thank you, Frank Hook, for asking me to share my thoughts with you tonight. The happy memories of time spent at the community center are also some of my earliest. As a student at Pine Hill, the community center was the place to be on Friday nights, when brave volunteers would host Friday night at the movies. After some years working in childcare, I have a new level of respect for those who spent their Friday nights volunteering to create a fun and safe social atmosphere for kids. In 2011, the DS Summer Drama Program catalyzed my love of theater and would establish the SCC as my summer home for the next 6 years. Participating in plays and musicals throughout the year was a very formative part of my adolescence, but the summer productions were always my favorite. The ability to walk from home to rehearsal each day instilled a sense of independence in me at such a young age and deepened my appreciation for Sherborn's small, walkable community. I performed in productions at the community center until I graduated from DSHS in 2017. As a student director for the Sherborn Community Center Foundation, I helped to plan events like Jammin' in the Red and the Election Day food drives. I particularly enjoyed this experience as a way to connect with my peers and other residents outside of the academic setting. And of course, I will always think fondly of the Sunday morning meetings at Bob's and Millis with Frank, Bob, and Bill. Growing up in Sherborn, the community center was a space for me to deepen my skills as a performer and a leader. The lessons I learned through these experiences have carried me into adult life and wouldn't have been possible without the tireless work that is done by Foundation members. Throughout its history, this building has taken on many forms to serve Sherborn residents, and I am particularly grateful to have been able to use the space at this point in its history, living up to its title as a place to bring people together. Thank you for your time and your continued support of the Sherborn Community Center Foundation."
Continuing on this theme, I'd like to ask Scott Walker, who has been the leader of that particular summer program and many other programs at the Sherborn Community Center, to say a few words.
Hi, so my name is Scott Walker, and I have been teaching in Dover Sherborn for 20 years. I have been directing here for 20 years. I'm not going to be as prepared or as articulate as Elizabeth, but when I think about the Sherborn Community Center, I will tell you that it is basically my entire adulthood. I was 22 and newly hired as a middle school teacher at Dover Sherborn when I was first hired by Paul Burkle to work here at the middle school. And I had been offered a few different jobs teaching in the area. And the reason that I ended up at Dover Sherborn was because Mr. Burkle offered me the opportunity to also direct some shows. But then once the fall hit, I found out there actually was already somebody directing at the middle school. So he said, you could do a couple small plays. And so I decided I would put some shows together as additional side programs. But then there was no space in the inn. Essentially, the auditorium, which is shared by both the middle school and the high school in Dover, was unavailable. And so I was told by the administration, you will not be able to direct. So, yeah, I know, right? So, the whole reason I ended up. So I went on the internet and I started looking for local places. I said, surely there is some place between these two towns where you could put on a production and it would be supported by the community. And I found the 1858 townhouse, Sherborn Community Center, online, but I emailed the address that was there. But I thought for sure we would not be able to use the space. It looked like it was a place that was going to be way out of our price range. It was a place that was going to be for weddings and not for something like this small theater program that I was thinking we would put together. The email that came back was, why do you think that could possibly be true? We want a program like this in this building. This is what we want this building to be. So 20 years ago, I directed a dinner theater here in this room for the first time. And it essentially is the reason why I am still in Dover Sherborn all these years later. 5 years after directing that show, not only was I then the director at the middle school for all of their shows, but a group of then 7th and 8th graders who were now finishing their drama year and were looking forward to moving on, half of them to high school and half of them to their 8th grade year, wanted to do a show where they could remain friends and stay together. And they said, could we put something together in the summer? And once again, there was no room in the inn because in the summertime, the air conditioning is turned off at that school and the carpets are being cleaned. But I went back to the community center and I asked if we could start a summer program here. We're about to have our 15th summer in this building. We been an important part of so many kids' lives, and not only has this been such an important part of my life, but when you add up the number of people who have come to this building and watched our different shows, you are talking about thousands of people who have walked into this building and supported our kids and supported the theater program here. That is what this building has been to our schools and to our kids, and certainly to me. It is why I am still here. And on a very personal note, I will tell you that about almost 15 years ago now, my twins were baptized down the street in Medfield. And when we were looking for a place to host the reception for our kids' baptism, the community center opened its doors for us. And tonight, when I told my kids that I was going out to a meeting, they said, "What meeting?" And I said, "It's a meeting at the Sherborn Community Center." And they said, "What is it for?" And I said, "Well, I don't exactly know. I know that the Sherborn Community Center needs me to speak." And they said, "Oh no, that's like our whole life," because they've grown up in this room. My twins are about to turn 15. When they turned 1, they were crawling around that floor while we were programming lights for the very first summer. So, not only is this an important place to this community, important to this school, not only do I hope that it continues to live up to the mission that it has had for all these years, but I just want you to know that to me personally, it means a very great deal. Thank you very much.
Barbara Ambles would like to say a few words.
Why don't you go first with the recognition and I'll do it after? Can you do the flash so
Yeah. To underscore what Scott Walker was sharing with you, he shared it from his perspective, from the importance of him as an adult and an educator and a person that inspires our young people, which, as you could hear, spans a great age. I'd like to have the voice of a couple of those who worked under Scott Walker and who've been in this building, both in terms of performance and also more than just that. So the first person I would like to call up is it Frankie or Claire? Who's going first? Right, so Claire Whitaker, who is not only a student director, but also has been in the musicals and theater program with Scott. Thank you.
Ooh, slide.
Hello. My name is Claire Whitaker, and I just graduated Dover Sherborn High School. I lived in Sherborn my entire life, and never have I not known the Sherborn Community Center. From Girl Scouts in elementary school, to Friday night at the movies, to banquets and to drama, I have come to call this place my second home. I've spent a few of my summers here for summer drama, and one memory that stands out to me was one summer, I didn't have a consistent ride, which meant I would have to bike to rehearsals at 8 a.m. in the morning. I definitely underestimated the bike ride when planning it out, especially all the hills on Nason Hill Road. I finally made it to the SEC, completely out of breath, and Mr. Walker, the director, was standing there, and all I said was, I did not know there were that many hills. But even though the bike ride sucked all the energy out of me, I continued to bike to the SEC every morning and from every afternoon because of the memories that were made here. I made some of my very closest friends, played some of my favorite roles, and learned so much about myself within these four walls. Every single summer, the SEC has consistently been here for the drama program, no matter how many times we annoyed the Sherborn Library, and I can't imagine those summers in any other location. I've also served on the board of the SEC along with Charlotte Bueller, and it was an absolute pleasure participating on the board of such an important landmark that has made such an impact on not only my life, but many others. While on the board, I have witnessed how much the board members care for this building and the amount of effort that goes into making sure it is tended to. This building has been here for all these years because of this board, and I strongly believe that it should remain that way. The SEC has been here for me all of my life, and today I am here for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, that was wonderful. One more person from the performing arts world is Frankie Kovrilia. He's going to say a few words. Frankie.
When I think of summer, I immediately think of the Sherborn Community Center. Being in this building tonight takes me back to some of the best summers of my life. While most other people my age might have spent their summers outdoors at camp, I spent mine in a nice air-conditioned building, forging lifelong friendships with some of the most important people in my life today. While we were all really here to showcase Dover Sherborn's forgotten talent in some of the school district's best shows and musicals, I will always cherish the memories we made along the way. Coming to set build to do anything but build the set. Smacking my head on the metal ceilings every time I walk down those stairs. Elizabeth Owens showing up late every time even though she lives across the street. Me following her lead every year after that. Getting water dumped on my head. Did you think I was talking about the ice bucket challenge? I was talking about the leaky ceilings. The table collapsing on my family during the dinner theater. Setting off the fire alarm on opening night for the Addams Family. Missing my cue during rehearsals because we were too busy doing the nay-nay backstage. Throwing my cards on the floor and storming off every time I was losing a game. Seeing how many times I could cough loudly downstairs before the library told me to leave. The answer is 14. There really is no other place I would have rather spent the last 7 summers than at the Sherborn Community Center. I cannot express how much this building means to me, my childhood, and my drama career, and I'm sure other people can say the same. My very first musical, Into the Woods, took place on this very stage. After that point, this place quickly became my summer home. From yelling at children as an uptight school teacher one year to jumping around on stage as a mermaid the next. The Sherborn Community Center allowed me space to grow more as an actor each summer. Although my senior year spring musical was canceled due to the pandemic, I feel fulfilled knowing that I was able to give my final summer performance here at the SCC. I will take the lessons I learned in this building with me for the rest of my performing life. such as not waiting to use a smoke machine until opening night, the importance of marking the edge of the stage with brightly colored tape unless you want to crowd surf in the orchestra, and even how to cross the street correctly so that Mr. Walker doesn't catch a fine. I sincerely hope this building will stand to serve other kids in this community the way it did for me. Thank you.
So you've heard a lot of testimonials from those that have used this that were in the younger ages of life, from Elizabeth Owen being in the elementary school to Scott Walker's children crawling around at a year-old, going all the way through high school, possibly beyond. We didn't ask anybody to come and talk to you about some of the other things that the building has been used for the Christmas bazaars and for caucus and for a variety of other things. But I do want to close with one combo of personal reflections, and that is just a rest of the family. So we heard from Dewey Talbot, who started, so I want to go to through the generations, and we have the other two generations here, so just short words from them to kind of share also what the father's dream has carried through in the generations, which is one of the reasons it's so important, what makes Sherborn so special and makes this building so precious.
Alright, so I spoke before as my dad, and now I'm speaking as myself. I'm Joey Talbert, and I wear a lot of hats here in this town. I'm a mom, I'm a Girl Scout leader, I work at Pine Hill, and as you know, I'm a daughter of my parents who are important. This building is important to them. So in all my hats, this building is important. As a Girl Scout leader, thank you, Arnie, for letting us Girl Scouts use this building. I mean, we have our Halloween party here every year, and he just smiles through it. It's like, of course you can decorate everywhere. I mean, we're really careful, and we follow the rules, but we have this amazing Halloween party every year, pre-pandemic. We will do it again post-pandemic.
As long as I get the cookies.
As long as you get the cookies, they're mints, I know. But the Girl Scouts, we have meetings here, we have that wonderful party here. We couldn't really, the Girl Scouts desperately need this building. I mean, we use it for a lot of things. It's wonderful. I have my fly up here when my daughter became a cadet. We used this as a bridge. We bridged over and became cadets on the other side. As a teacher, I mean, the Friday night movies is huge. I know it's not happening at the moment, but it'll come back. I know it'll come back. And I know the kids really, really look forward to it. And they look forward to a place where they can just be kids together with amazing adult volunteers who are willing to do it. And as a child, I grew up in Sherborn. So as a child, this building means a lot to me. It's been, I remember it being the police station. I remember it being the actual town hall. I remember the Sherborn Players being here. I remember when it got condemned. And then it got saved. And then we did plays in here. I don't know if you guys remember Back Home Again, the play that we did in here when it first opened. And I did a bunch of plays here in the 90s. It's such a wonderful place. It's different, right? It's like, it's for the community. It's not anyone else's. It's ours. And that's a huge thing, to have a building that's the town's building, that we can come together as a town and do things together. And so I think, actually, I forgot, my dad told me to mention this, I almost forgot. I think it was the Sherborn Business Association. Does anyone remember the casino night that we had in here? It was awesome, right? I'm pretty sure the Sherborn Business Association did it. And we dressed up in the 20s garb, and we all came in, and all the Sherborn business people ran tables, and they raised funds for the Sherborn Business Association. We all got to gamble, and there was a Monster Mash in here. Remember that? It was an adult Monster Mash. We all get to dress up in Halloween costumes and party in here. It was really, really cool. So I wanted to say that this building, for me personally, means an awful lot, and I hope it stays the Sherborn Community Center Foundation's building. Thank you.
So my name is Renee, I'm 14 years old, and I've lived in Sherborn my entire life. This building has been an integral part of my childhood. Some of my fondest memories have been forged here. I've been fortunate enough to partake in summer theater and run Girl Scout meetings from this very room. From magic shows to gift wrapping parties, this building has always been a place for people to enjoy themselves.
Furthermore, the Sherborn Library has been fortunate enough to call the community center home for the past few years. Without it, this town would have been deprived of its access to books and media. When I was a Pine Hill student, classmates used to look forward to Friday night at the movies all week. We would talk about the showings, get dressed up in PJs, and bring our blankets to come see the shows. And people of all ages would stay after to pick up the copious amounts of popcorn that would always be on the ground, and it always felt like everyone lent a hand. Especially with the rise of technology, there's been a huge gap created between the younger and older generations. The community center has always been a place we can bridge that gap and come together. If we lose the community center, we will lose that connection. We as a community need to fight for the space to preserve the unity of our town and keep our people connected to each other and the world around us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joey and Renee. That was wonderful. So I hope you get a bit of a perspective of how important this building is to all the generations. Is there anybody else that would like the opportunity to say anything about the community center and what the community center is doing?
Thank you, Frank, very much. So I'm George Fisk, and I'm a member of the Sherborn Community Center Foundation and supporter and a former board member. And I want to tell you, I am so impressed with how hard you all worked. I don't remember an annual meeting with this many people, and I think that speaks very, very well of the community center, and I appreciate that very much. I also want to, as a testimonial, just tell you how much this has meant to me. I've been to many, many events here. I suspect all of us have been to a number, and it's been a terrific asset to the town of Sherborn, and I think we've been very fortunate to have this facility and the people who manage it and run it and have for many years now. One of the hats that I've worn is chair of the caucus committee, and boy, this is such a terrific venue. And when we made the switch from Pine Hill School or other, but we were over at the high school occasionally, to get the annual town caucus over here, it made a difference. It felt more like home. And we had great turnout and a lot of fun at the same time. So we conducted a lot of town business, but in good spirit, because this really has, the atmosphere is just terrific. And I commend you all for your support. There are a lot of important events, but I can tell you the most important event that I can think of here took place in 1956 when I was the 4th grade Middlesex County, I was the square dancing champion for Middlesex. I want that to go down in the books. The only additional comment I would mention, and I think we all know this, and that is that it's a great place. We hope it continues, certainly. But and I'll say in defense of the select board, I think we all know that they have a full plate these days. There are a lot of issues, and I suspect a number we probably aren't as familiar with because, frankly, they're sensitive issues and they're dealing with them. And we also know there are competing interests out there, not necessarily for this facility, but for facility space. And I think it's a real dilemma that they're faced with. And we all also, I think, understand that somebody or a person who could be integral in helping to develop a plan for the town in space usage would be a town administrator, and we don't have one. And their hands really are tied. You must know that there is a search that's being undertaken now, and I'm hopeful, being a part of that, as is Paul and others, that we will have a new town administrator in place. I'm hoping sooner than later, and having somebody in that capacity, I'm hoping will help us deal with these kinds of issues, because really there's so much that needs to be looked at. And I just commend all of you for coming out tonight and saying what you have to say in support. So thank you very much.
Thank you very very much, George. Charlie would like to come up and say a few words too. Charlie, please.
I came not to speak, and I'm not prepared with all the facts that have led to this. But I must tell you that this facility has been a vital asset to this town and is in many senses at the core of what a town should be. My wife, long deceased, and I were part of the group back in the early 1980s that raised money to create what we have. I would remind you that in addition to all that you have heard today about the health that this has bred into our community, I would ask you to think that the modern things where we have spent whatever it is, $10, $12 million, and whether it's management or mismanagement, I realize a negative statement, what would this town have done for the continuation of its library facilities if it were not for this building? Count me on the side of trying to find out what the issues are. I second George's observation that there are major issues. We have a very good group of 5 selectmen, I believe, who are dedicated to the interests of this town. And I am... Quick poll. I try to get to the essentials of issues. I understand that there's one selectman that understands and is fully supportive of this, and the other 4, I don't know. I am sure they have reasons. I intend to find out what those issues are, and I hope you will, and then talk with those other selectmen and weigh those issues and offer your opinion, and that's what will make this democracy and this nation of ours work and heal.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, George. Beautifully said. Really appreciate you coming out and sharing those thoughts with you, and all of you. Just wonderful job. I'd like to transition us on to the next and the last part of our meeting. It's a bit of more of a logistical action item component, and that is the nominating committee report, which I'm giving. And the first part of that nominating committee report is unfortunately the thing that I dislike doing the most, and that is the recognition of a departing member. This member, Eric Wedgen, has been with us for quite some time. He's a younger member of our board. It's very difficult to get young people on our board. They have families. Families have family needs. Those needs take both parents in many directions. But Eric felt that this was important enough for him to take time from all of that to make sure that this building was operating well and that it had a focus for those young children as well as young adults, and he was that spokesperson for that. We will truly miss Eric. So if Eric could come up here, I have something to offer him. So this is a little bit parliamentary. It's called a whereas. So I'm just going to read the whereas. So whereas Eric Wedgen has been an integral and key member of the Foundation's Board of Directors for 4 years, 2 of which were during the pandemic. Whereas he has been a key figure in populating Friday night at the movies by the bringing of an entourage of 3 children and all their friends, and then the brave enough to stay and chaperone and help at the end. And whereas Eric has been the voice of the younger parents of our town, adding needed perspective to board discussions, and whereas his talent, energy, listening, and interpersonal skills, he has enlivened and constructively shaped the work of the directors and officers of the foundation. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors hereby expresses its thanks and deep appreciation to Eric Wetchen for his significant contribution in advancing the work of the Sherborn Community Center Foundation, voted this June the 6th, 2022.
Say one quick word. So it's been a pleasure working with the board, and I really encourage you to leave your name on the sheet I think that's being passed around, because I think that will be really come in handy as we try to move forward. And you've seen all the great things that happen in this community center. I want to keep that going. Thanks.
So as Frank mentioned, we're moving into a more logistical part of the meeting, and we're going to go to the election of our board of directors. But I would sort of stay on the topic of recognizing departing members, and I would like to recognize some dearly departed members. We lost 3 emeritus directors in England: Bob Ambos, Pat Cassell, and George Lewis. And I just think they should be recognized.
For the last part of our annual meeting is the election of the Board of Directors. So I'd like to read you the slate. I believe most of the directors, not all, are here. If you could please stand. Elmore Alexander, Lois Alexander, Barbara Ambos, John Bueller, Arthur Crandall, Douglas Furbush, Frank Hook, William Keaveney, Michael Kickham, Carol Marple, Benny Rea, Thomas Traynor, and Corinne Whitaker. Barbara texted me the words that I need to say at this point, so I'm going to read those to you. I move that the clerk cast a vote for the full slate on behalf of the voting members.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. To all those who are members of the community center agree by raising their hand and saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. All those abstain. We have a new board. Thank you so much.
Great. So that really concludes the meeting. You may have noticed that we've been filming this on Sherborn Television. It will be taped and run. Will it be put on YouTube? Yeah. It'll be on YouTube as well, so you can email the link to your friends and family and encourage people to watch as much as they're willing to watch. So thank you very much for coming out.